Listen to this. God's nonsense plus your obedience provides evidence that God's nonsense makes sense. God's nonsense plus your obedience creates evidence that God's nonsense makes sense. Okay, Noah, go out and build an ark. That's nonsense. But when Noah went out and did it, he got it built, and the rain came. That makes sense. Moses, stand out there in front of the Red Sea and lift that rod. And if you lift that rod, the people gonna walk over on dry land. That is nonsense. Moses got out there, he lifted up that rod, the waters parted, the people walked up. Hey, that makes sense. Joshua, march around the walls of Jericho. And when you march around, the walls gonna fall. You mean all we got to do is march around? That's nonsense. But Joshua went around the walls of Jericho. The walls fell down flat. They took the city. That makes sense. Hey servants, I want you to pour some water in those jugs. We ain't got no wine around here, but just pour the water in the jug. Why are we pouring water in the jugs when we need wine? We don't need no water, we need wine. That's nonsense. But they were obedient, and when they poured out the water, it became wine, and the wine was better than the wine they started out with. It makes sense. Disciples, we got 5,000 people and they ain't got no food. Well, just take those 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread and you can feed 5. That's nonsense. But they were obedient. They started passing out the fish. They started passing out the bread, and 5,000 folk besides the men were fed. Well, lepers, go show yourself to the priest. That's nonsense. Why we gonna do that? We got leprosy. We can't go to the priest unless we're healed. But the Bible says that as they went, they were cleansed. Lame man, get up off yourself and walk. Get up off your bed and walk. That's nonsense. I've been lame all my life, but he was obedient. He stood up and began to walk. I'm trying to tell you that tithing is nonsense, that I could have more by having less. But when you are obedient, God will show you that God's nonsense makes sense when you have obedience. God's nonsense creates the evidence that proves that his nonsense makes sense. And you don't learn that until you are obedient.